Hey guys, it's Drew and I'm back with another video. Sorry, it's been a couple weeks since my last video. Trying to get in the hang of this thing and hope to in the future at least have one video every week. But it's good to be back. I know many are struggling right now with the pandemic and the shutdown, many with the virus, family members, friends that are struggling with the virus. And then many are struggling mentally, just with anxiety and depression in this season. So I want to talk again about that. I want to share some of my own story with depression and anxiety. And this is May. It's actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And so it's important to talk about this. And I know, again, many are struggling with this anyway, but definitely during this pandemic, uh, a lot of this is flared up and many people are struggling during this time. So I hope this helps you as I share my story and just a few things that helped me along the way. So I struggled with what I thought was depression, and it was, but didn't realize it was just as much anxiety and maybe some other things happening 8 years ago. Okay. So we had just adopted our fifth child. We have four biological children and an adopted son. And I don't think it was one thing, but I think it was a handful of things, real everyday life stuff that just contributed to my situation. But I fell into this dark, deep depression, the pit of despair. And it was the first time I had experienced something like that, where my brain failed. I mean, it was not working. Um, I couldn't connect the dots. I had memory loss. I was a shell of myself. It was like Drew was not home. I honestly felt like a 3-year old, and all the data that I had accumulated over my years was gone for good, and I couldn't get it back. And so obviously that fueled a lot more fear and anxiety and depression. And I remember I had done counseling in the past and always a big fan of it and believer of that. And so I went and got some counseling. But to be honest, I was going hoping that my counselor would recommend me to a psychiatrist so that I could get some drugs to help me. I was desperate. Um, but I also knew the counseling and therapy would help too. So the first thing that I'd love to share that I did that I think will help is get some counseling, find a therapist that can help you. And they're not going to fix everything, but I do believe that it's one piece of the puzzle that can really help. And just engaging in that process, there's something about it that just helps. And so go see a counselor, go see a therapist, a licensed one that can really help you, and just get in the process. Don't look for the first, second, third session to fix everything, because it's not. You just need to engage the process. And as I said last time, do the little things that are going to help you, even though we don't know exactly when. The second thing is see a doctor and get some medication if they feel you need it. Um, Look, there's a stigma. Okay. And I'm a pastor, right? Like, you don't, there's the talk, you don't trust in God if you take, medication for your brain and mental illness. Well, look, I didn't care at that point because I was desperate. And honestly, it's like any other organ in our body, if it's not working well, like we don't have any problem, getting doctor's advice and taking some medication to help with that. And I believe this is an organ and it's a unique one, but it was pretty clear that chemicals and things were not operating properly. And if there was a medication that could help me, like, bring it. Okay. So we did, I did get on a medication that what it did for me is I was doing lots of stuff that didn't seem to be helping, that I knew should help. It's like the medication just gave me the traction that I needed for all those other things to kick in. And it was a piece of the puzzle that in the end helped me come out of it, I believe. And so see a doctor. And if they feel like medication can help you, take it. All right. And again, it's not going to solve all your stuff. Do all the other things, some of the things that we're talking about here. But that may be something that you need to do. Seek a doctor's counsel on that. So get counseling, see a doctor, and take medication if you need to. Exercise, right? I know for me, the one thing I could control, and again, it wasn't easy, was physically getting myself out to run, right? And it was brutal because my mind would go 24/7 negative. So when I was out running, it was a fight mentally, but I knew this is going to help. And if there's one thing I can control, because it doesn't seem like I can control my mind and my thoughts at this point, I'm going to control my legs and I'm going to get out there and run. And I knew that it would lead to healthier things, endorphins and discipline, and it could only do good. So, exercise is an important piece of the puzzle as well. Fourthly, make changes practically in your life. As you're going through this, you may see like there are things that are going on in your life practically that are contributing to just an unhealthy state of mind. And so you have to be willing to make some changes. Now, that's tricky because sometimes stopping things is harder and takes longer than starting them. And other people are involved. And many times it's good things that you need to change and maybe stop doing, or some things you need to start doing that you weren't. So, but this is a time where you got to make some practical changes, and that's hard. Okay. And so, but we've got to do it because some things, some circumstances, some practical things are contributing. And so, again, it's the hardest time to make changes, right? Because you don't even want to get out of bed. And you're not even sure if it's the right changes to make because you can't trust your mind. But I believe that, you're going to learn some things that, this would be good. And this could be something little that I do and need to change that will help in the future. Get counseling, take medication, exercise, make practical changes, and then take some time to be quiet. All right. For me, I am a believer of God. So for me, it's spending time with God and just being quiet in this busy, noisy culture, like stilling myself and meditating. For me, I meditate on the truth of Scripture, and I, talk to God and do my best to listen to see if He's got something to say. Not audibly, by the way. God doesn't speak to me audibly, but it's kind of that, sense that you feel like, He's got something to say that's true and that you need to hear. But it's even this dependence on something outside of yourself that knows better than you do, and taking time to just be quiet and still. Now, that's hard, and it's tempting not to do that when you're struggling with depression and anxiety. Why? Because your thoughts are negative. And so to get alone, with your thoughts or with God, like those negative thoughts are consistently fighting for their attention. And so the temptation is to not have quiet time. But I want to encourage you to do it. It's hard, and you're going to fight every moment in that, but I think it's important to do it. I think it's also important to do things where you're not using your mind. I mean, to escape the negative ruminating thoughts, have those things as well and take time to do those. But I think getting some quiet time, and I encourage, maybe you're not even a believer of God, like you get desperate in these times, go and talk to Him and just be authentic and real with Him because He can handle it. Like get alone and have some quiet time. Also talk to other people. Okay, the temptation again is to isolate. The last thing you want to do is talk to people, but it's so important and so critical that we share the reality with people. I know many times people during this time are like, "How you doing?" and they're looking for the fine answer, and then I just throw up, honesty all over them and share with them how I'm actually doing for 5 minutes. And it's like, no, I'm struggling. I'm depressed. I'm in a dark place. And, it's amazing how people support you and they listen, and it really helps. And you can also find out that you're not alone, that other people are struggling with it. So that's an important key part of the process as well, as talk to others. And then finally, talk to yourself. Now, I'm a thinker, right? So my mind is going, and that's part of the problem. I've kind of realized I think I have some OCD that I struggle with. Real OCD, not just, I like things to be organized. But So my mind can be going, and I struggle with all the cognitive distortions that when you go see a therapist, they say, here's all the lies you're believing and the perspectives you have that are flawed and not reality. Well, I checked all the boxes, that all the lies that I was believing and my mind was going to default with. But it's important for us to not just think, but to talk to ourselves like out loud. And you don't have to do that in public so people think you're really crazy. But when you're alone, talk to yourself, all right? And allow your own ears to hear your own voice, right? Because there's a power in that. You're not just in your head, okay? Many times it's not real until you speak it and you hear it. And then you start to speak the truth that your mind is having trouble believing at this time. And your ears hear it. They start to believe the truth too, instead of the lies that are ruminating in your head 24/7. And it is a battle. It is a fight, but you got to stay in the fight and speak the truth to yourself, okay? And allow yourself to hear it over and over again, because that's rewiring your brain. Okay, it's in a rut, and it's going to take getting out of the rut. It's going to fall back in, and you've got to stay consistent on speaking truth about yourself, about life, that your value doesn't come from what other people think. Your value doesn't come from how well you perform. Okay, you are a valuable person regardless. You are loved regardless, and you need to speak the truth and let yourself hear it so that you believe it and your mind is getting renewed. So those are things that have helped me. Again, my story is I've struggled since that first time 8 years ago. Okay. You'd think I'd have learned something. It's like, all right, awesome. I've got this. Well, 3 years later, I was back in that state of depression, and it lasted another 6 months. And I learned something though. And then it was another couple years and I fell into it again for 6 months. And, the reality is I've learned that even those things and those times are good. And I can be thankful for them in the midst of them. I'm definitely thankful when they're done, because I'm like, wow, this is so critical for me becoming the person that I need to be. And again, as a believer in God, I believe God allows things to happen that feel bad, but in the end, they're good, and he works them out for good in our lives if we just trust him in the midst of it. And so, and then 2 years ago, I struggled for 6 months. And then after I came out of that, there was only a 6-month window. And then I fell back in it again. And that season and that episode lasted for a year, that I just came out of 10 weeks ago. And so this is part of my story. And, look, this may be something I struggle with for the rest of my life. It's likely that it will. I do believe I'm learning things to prevent it from happening and to come out of it sooner than later. I'm making changes significant in my life and adding things to my life that are healthy and getting rid of some things that are not. But I don't have to be afraid of the future. Okay, I don't have to be afraid of future depression and anxiety, right? Like, why be afraid of something that hasn't happened yet? I believe in the same way over the last 8 years that I'll get through it, and I don't have to give up. And no matter how dark it gets, okay, I believe that there's a purpose in it, and that it'll ultimately, if I don't give up, it'll lead and lend to good in my life and in the lives of others. And so I hope this has helped you guys. Again, I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you. Those of you that are struggling during this time, hang in there. Don't give up. Keep doing the little things. I hope some of these things will help you and maybe think about things a little bit differently. But I love you guys. I'm thinking about you. I'm praying for you. And if this helps somebody maybe pass it on to them, and we'll see you next week.